Welcome to this week's art tour. I am Danelle. I've been an artist for many decades. I've been trying some new things. Mostly over the years, I've done large oil paintings, mostly of animals. This great white shark behind me is a good example. But since starting this channel, I've been trying acrylic gouache, some watercolors, and some in plein air oils. And so I've been out painting on the trails every morning. I take my border collies and usually our little Chihuahua mix out on the trails each morning for a walk. And I make a painting, do some sketching. Sometimes they turn out well, sometimes I have to come home and fix them. I have a little segment that I'll show you at the end of how I fixed a watercolor that I did out in the woods that did not turn out the way that I wanted it to. So I came home and repainted over the top of the watercolor with my acrylic gouache. So if this kind of content is interesting to you and you'd like to follow along, it'd be awesome if you would join the community and hit that subscribe, maybe share it with friends. And the like button, actually my favorite thing though is if you comment. I love the feedback. I have a lot to learn even though I have been painting and doing art for many, many years. I am very new to especially the acrylic gouache, so I love to hear your input, your ideas, and people have given me really interesting advice even on just the tape that I put on the outside of my papers when I'm out painting. So let's get started on the tour. Here is the first painting of the week. I did a vlog of painting this. You can click on this card up above if you'd like to see that. This is one painting that I did fix when I got home. I had a big drawing error here. I made this tree about half as tall as it needed to be. It came home looking quite odd. So I repainted that and looks quite a bit better now. This is acrylic gouache. This is a bull pine or a shore pine. They tend to look like little, large bonsai trees when they're growing here in these bogs or muskegs. If you've been following my channel at all, you have learned a lot about muskegs. Very common here in Southeast Alaska. And here is another scene that I have painted quite a few times. This is at a close by lake called Ward Lake. There's a little shelter here and a little fly fisherman. I in a previous painting, tried to get a fly fisherman in there with my paint, but my brushes were just a little too big, so he turned out a little out of proportion. So this time I used my pen. I usually use a waterproof ink pen to just sketch in the painting first, and then put watercolor over the top of it. So I just sketched that guy in. It was very misty and rainy. I was sitting in a shelter this morning, and so you can hardly even see these mountains that are back here on this day. So I really like painting the same scene repeatedly. The light changes. I feel like it builds my skill because I'm more familiar with the scene each time and I can try something different. I can approach it differently, maybe do things a little better, try a little bit different color mixtures. On these trees here, I can tell I used, I think my watercolor set might possibly have, I think this is maybe a Payne's Gray or something similar over here. So these trees look a little different. So I really like just trying a different scene repeatedly. And this is a good example of that too. This is another beach I have painted quite a few times. This is Guard Island. It has a little lighthouse on it that is no longer manned or maintained. The light does still work and warn mariners. There were some little boats out there. It's a pretty busy channel. There's usually float planes going by, sometimes whales. I have a vlog of painting here. I'll put a card up above if you want to click on that and see it. And a whale did appear that day, but it just barely, you could see its back in the, over there when it came. But I go to this beach a lot, so it gets painted a lot. Here's another place I visit a lot. Now this one, I do not love the way it turned out. It's a very gloomy spot. And this is a creek. I know I have to tell you this because my friend came by and he thought this was a trail. Our water here, the rocks and underneath tends to be very brown. So it's really difficult to make it look like water. And this is so gloomy that there's really not very many reflections on top of it. So I'm still working out how to, this particular creek especially stymies me on trying to figure out how to make it look like water. This is a little game trail. This is a little beach. I don't love the way these branches up here turned out. So just one of those days of getting some practice and having it not turn out great, but a good experience. And here is one that I also had to finish when I got home. It started raining pretty good when I was out there. This is a little creek that comes down where a small landslide happened many years ago. I had, in my last art tour, I showed what happens if it rains too hard when you're painting with acrylic gouache. It just turns into a big muddy mess. It just puddles up, and then all the paint just ran off by the time I got home. So this day I got wise and put it away when I was just barely had a composition just kind of barely painted in, and then finished this when I got home. I'm pretty happy with this one. You can actually tell it's a waterfall. I've been trying a lot to get waterfalls to look more like waterfalls. Almost every walk I go on somehow involves water. We do live in a rainforest, so I get a lot of practice trying to paint water. And here's another scene that I paint fairly often. This beach is maybe 3 or 4 minutes from my house. And often these cruise ships come up the channel in the morning when I'm there. It was a very misty, overcast morning, as is frequently the case here in Ketchikan. It was fairly low tide this day, and I'm fairly happy with the way this one turned out. When you start with permanent pen, you do get a few artifacts sometimes, like up here. I think I was going to make these trees taller. I'm not sure why I have those little scribbles up there. Today I did the same scene, but the tide was higher, so you could see the water came up quite a bit higher. I kind of like the way that I painted these a little brighter today. I have a lot of leftover scribbles here. I was feeling really, really tired this morning. I haven't been feeling that well this week. So I was kind of hurrying and being a little careless when I put in my initial drawing. Again, there was a cruise ship coming up the channel, but it was so small when I saw it this morning that you can't quite tell it's a cruise ship as well. This one has a little broader vista, so you can see Guard Island, the same island with the lighthouse in this one, but not this one. But both of these are okay. I'm not super delighted by the ghost of these scribbly marks, but you know, sometimes when you're just sketching and going quickly and trying to capture the scene, that's how it goes. And here is a painting that I also finished when I got home. I did this one in watercolor, pen and watercolor, like I often do out on the trail. But I just wasn't feeling happy with how it was turning out. I was having a hard time with the watercolor not being able to create layers. Watercolor, as a longtime oil painter, it's been fun, but sometimes it frustrates me because I find it hard that I can't layer colors on top as well. And having to start light and then go dark is a continuing challenge for me, which is fun, but some days it just doesn't work out. So I came home and I just painted over the top of this with my acrylic gouache, and I am pretty happy with the way it turned out. I really like the way these rocks on the bottom came out. And these are Devil's Club plants. I did have to try pretty hard to get these big leaves up here to look right. They needed to be very thin. They grow very flat and wide. And so to get those to look right, I had to try quite a few times. Anyway, I have a video of repainting this that I will show you next. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for joining the tour. Now I wish I would have put my paints on the other side of my painting so my hand wasn't constantly in the way, but there's my watercolor that I did that I was not happy with. So I start brightening it up with a mixture of yellow ochre and lemon yellow. And then I have a cool green also mixed. I believe that's probably ultramarine and maybe a little cerulean blue too, or what my set calls sky blue. Just kind of re-blocking in the areas, getting the darks in the water. You can see to the left the way our water looks. I was just talking about how brown it is. So I'm trying to get those really, really dark banks in there, mixing blue with some of that burnt sienna. And just blocking in the main darks. Looks like I'm trying to get a little bit of the highlights, the reflections in there too. This particular spot has more light in it than the other creek where I was talking about how difficult it was to make it look like water. This is a little more open spot. So just going back in the forest there. Oh, this is where I am first trying to get those Devil's Club leaves in there. I did have to switch to my smallest brush because I could not get how flat and thin those leaves look. So I'm getting a little of the moss on top of the rocks. I'm kind of going back and forth between getting the darks in and the lights in. Probably should have gotten all my darks in first, but I get a little bored with doing it one way. Now I had to leave for about an hour and come back, so my light changed quite a bit where I was painting there. So it's actually a little better now. That harsh sun coming through my skylights wasn't helping a lot. And the tops of those rocks, you can see me zooming in on my photo, they look really pink, and I believe that's because of that brownish color of the algae underneath stains the rocks. So I used, I think, a tiny bit of that scarlet red, which I do not use that very often, with some white, probably a touch of blue and a little burnt sienna. Getting the highlights on those rocks, getting the moss on the rocks. And trying to get a little of the light on those tree trunks in the back. It's hard to see that on my the reflection on my phone. And then I go back to work on those Devil's Club leaves a little bit more. I'm not sure if that's my smallest brush or not. Now I'm blacking out, not blacking out, but I'm getting the background in around those leaves again because I realize they need to be a lot thinner. I think that is when I switched to my really small brush, which I think I stuck with for the rest of the painting. I'm using those Rosemary and Company brushes, which I have come to absolutely love. Just trying to get the shapes of the rocks in there. It's got to be so careful with the structure of the rocks so they don't just look like blobs. Now I think that might help with the water that I was having a hard time with in the other painting, is to get some of the colors of the rocks under the water shining through. It's just that that other area that's a little gloomier, nothing shines through terribly well. So just getting in those reflections. Trying to get a couple more rocks in there. I think that orangish color was working pretty well. And then the fun reveal after you take off the tape. I love that part. I think we all do. It looks like it has a cute little frame. Thanks for joining me today on this week's art tour. If you'd like to see more of my art, I have a lot of my older oil paintings like this one on my website, danellekelly.art, and I plan to be adding a lot of these newer, smaller paintings on there here soon when I figure out the technicalities. I hope you stay creative and have fun while doing it.